it's a bit like perhaps the early phases of a relationship. The beginning is, in a way, it's given, isn't it? Sort of the magic is given, and then later on, as things develop, then it gets to the point where you perhaps might have to put in some work, and I think there's something similar that happens with art forms. So perhaps you might learn the rules, or in any case, maybe if you don't learn them, perhaps our minds are able to establish patterns and understand those rules. Or perhaps rules isn't the right word, perhaps these forms.
Oh, yeah.
And then the question is, how do you then rediscover the essence which exists in the present moment?
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Petra.
It's so great to meet you.
Same. I've been looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, me too. Are you you in Prague at the moment?
Yes.
Because I know you've been going to Lithuania as well, doing your Shakespeare. Is it Shakespeare in Song?
Yes. I was in Lithuania for mainly it was to work with some teachers. So basically, I have sort of two parallel careers really, that are connected. One is as a performer, as an artist, and a lot of education work in parallel with that, connected to performing arts. So I was actually a guest trainer at a music school in Lithuania, a very good music school, and I was working with their teachers on an EU-funded project. So helping them to, let's say, explore new approaches to teaching music, just engaging with their students. Yeah,
I'm always so happy to hear when there's these things going on, like educating the young generation, or also children, making them aware of what is possible in the arts.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's been quite central to my practice. I've always felt that, it's kind of what happened to me. I learned from people who were active themselves, let's say, as artists, as actors, directors, and so on, but who dedicated some of their time to teaching me. And so I've tried to do the same, really. I think it's a very important cycle to be part of, and it ends up coming back to you. It's very, I think you get a lot and you learn a lot out of passing on to others the things that you've learned yourself.
I hear that a lot from artists who teach as well, saying how enriching that is also to, learn through teaching.
Yeah, it's interesting because my first ever proper teaching experience was when I was 19. Really? And I was asked to teach guitar to kids every Saturday morning. And I, at the time, I mean, I only started playing guitar when I was, about 16. So I learned fairly quickly, but the way I'd learned was by ear and sort of self-taught. So actually, when it came to teaching the kids, at that point in time, I didn't even know the names of chords.
Really?
So, because I was all self-taught and playing, and actually, it was a wonderful way for me to learn. I'm glad I went about it that way, because I think there's a lot of merit to that whole approach. But anyway, once you have to teach something to others, when it comes to music, you need to, at the very least, know, the chords with the guitar. And so I had to actually learn the names of chords as I was teaching them to the students. So I think it's a sort of prime example of learning as you're teaching.
Yeah, and I also think the way you teach, or the way somebody understands or not understand what you're saying, also then makes you reflect on, okay, why am I doing, or why should you do this? Or, sometimes people ask questions that you haven't thought about. So I think that is also then, makes that part of the learning for the teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, I mean, there'd be so much to unravel with this, actually. I mean, I think there's just something about the role of trying to help others to learn something and develop and grow, that inevitably, as you say, what's coming back to you is telling you a lot about yourself, and not only about where you're at with your knowledge on the subject,
Exactly.
but also where you're at in yourself. Because so much, I think, when it comes to teaching or fostering a process, is so much about the quality of your presence, and sort of where you're at as a person. It's it's very true.
Yeah, I can simplify it because I homeschooled my children, and I was absolutely useless in maths when I was in high school. And the moment I started teaching my children maths, it suddenly opened up a new world for me, and I started loving it. Yeah. And I always thought my maths teacher, Mr. Dreyer, he would have been so proud of me. If I think I got my children through GCSEs with my level of maths. But it's like that, it's like just looking at it again from a different angle.
Yeah. No, it's I think there's something also about when you need whatever it is that's being learned to be for it to be understood. Then the very process of trying to formulate this, whether it be verbally or just in your whole, however you intend to go about passing this on, that in itself cements something or helps the process in yourself to go deeper, isn't it? It's
absolutely.
It's really, I think, for me, it's been, I absolutely invaluable in my life to get to not to mention, what you get back from students. I'm not even talking about sort of basic appreciation, which when you get that, it's wonderful and it's very rewarding and gratifying. But just, it's such a gift, really, isn't it, to work with other people, and especially when it's young people who are, I don't want to intellectualize it too much, but it's just really,
yeah, I understand what you mean.
Precious thing, really, the whole process of.
I get many artists that I speak to that talk about their first teacher, or the piano teacher, or the teacher who made the difference for them when they started doing art or drama or something. So you hear that a lot, and they name the teacher. There's always one or two teachers that stand out for them in their initial career, when they started out, or maybe sometimes later. So I always appreciate the teachers a lot. And I also think, like you said before, I think sometimes when you do something, but you don't have an example of where this can go, or you have somebody there, sometimes you maybe see somebody do something and they are successful, not just successful, but doing this form of art. But the moment you connect with the person, the moment there's somebody that you can ask a question to, or that you see, or that you can connect with, I think that makes you also pursue the art form in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it doesn't feel like that person is sort of on some different plane, the artist's plane, and it makes them feel like you're just on the same journey, really. It's very I found it gave me so much confidence to work. I mean, when I was around 19, I basically did an apprenticeship with a theatre group in Italy, actually, which lasted about 5.5 years. A mixed bag, in terms of experiences. I must admit that it wasn't all fantastic, but what I can say for sure is that by working with, as I said before, working with people who are active in their field, as actors, directors, on, and having the chance to be right in there with them, doing all that, learning from them, but also perhaps also acting alongside them. It just boosts your confidence so much. It really helps. Yeah.
I can imagine. And I also love the fact that you were self-taught, that you started playing the guitar and you're self-taught.
Yeah, so I actually began, well, I used to sing all the time as a kid. So I remember running up and down, the apartment staircase singing because there was a nice echo. So I used to sing. I love the sound coming back, the echo. And then eventually, when I was around 14 in high school, I started writing and poems. And at the same time, met a few musicians at school, and we formed a band. And I was a singer of the band, and there was this wonderful guitarist, Kai, German, and he and I would meet up, and I'd have these words, and he'd have these wonderful chord progressions. Very gifted for a 14-year-old he was. And we'd just come up with these, in retrospect, really, really good songs for teenagers, and I would sing out these poems. And all the while, really, I'd be observing him play. And of course, there was another guitarist in the band as well, so I'd watch him, and I'd have quite a lot of contact with musicians in general at that time. And eventually, it was natural for me to pick up a guitar as well. And well, really, I never looked back because it opened up a whole world for me. And actually, a lot of my learning when it came to playing the guitar was by writing songs. So I didn't even know sort of what chords were, really, what names of chords were or anything.
Okay.
And I'd be just finding these wonderful sounds. To me, they were wonderful because they didn't have a name and they just sounded so interesting and beautiful. And I would craft songs, just in that way. And so that's really my way in, right, to the guitar, and gradually played more and more and more, more bands, more things, and so on.
But I find this always amazing, self-teaching. I do have appreciation for the formal education, but I do think some people they are able to self-teach, and I think also there comes some sort of freedom with it that you sort of discover, rather than learn, you discover. And I think that is also something that artists need. And I don't know if you find it with yourself, is the moment you start understanding the rules of something, it sort of makes you a little bit more not as daring, because suddenly you wonder, okay, so would this be okay? But if you don't know it, then you sort of just do and explore.
Yeah, that's been the case. I think that's been the case with me. I mean, I must admit, I've been being very honest with you about this now, Petra. The guitar, in a way, has lost a bit of its magic for me, compared to those early days when, a chord, I'd just put my fingers here. What would happen? Oh, this beautiful or strange even combination of notes would come out and ring and create this sound. And as you say, I mean, quite rightly, it's an exploration, and you're finding these gems. And I think I think the real challenge, it's a bit like perhaps the early phases of a relationship. The beginning is, in a way, it's given, isn't it? It's sort of the magic is given. And then later on, as things develop, then, it gets to the point where you perhaps might have to put in some work. And I think there's something similar that happens with art forms. So perhaps you might learn the rules, or in any case, maybe if you don't learn them, perhaps our minds are able to establish patterns and understand those rules. Or perhaps rules isn't the right word, perhaps these forms.
Yeah.
And then the question is, how do you then rediscover the essence which exists in the present moment and is sort of because those chords are still the same. Nothing has changed, but you've just become used to them. And so how do you rediscover the magic? I think that's a different phase yet again, and I can't claim to have mastered, if there is such a thing as mastering such a phase, I think. But it's just how do you re-engage to keep it, or to rediscover that magic which is difficult to define.
Qui dove il mare luccica e tira forte il vento, su una vecchia terrazza davanti al golfo di Sorrento. Un uomo abbraccia una ragazza dopo che aveva pianto. Poi si schiarisce la voce e ricomincia il canto. Te voglio bene, ma tanto, tanto bene sai. È una catena ormai che scioglie il sangue di intravene, sai. Potenza della lirica, dove ogni derramma è un pardo, e con un po' di trucco e con la mimica puoi diventare un altro.
Ja říkám ano.
Já hovorím ano.
Ano. Sí.
It's not just music, you also do acting.
Yes. Acting. I actually went, I was in this theatre group for 5.5 years in Italy. So I did a long apprenticeship with them. And then I went to the Oxford School of Drama, which is a very good drama school in the UK. And so I've done theatre work. And started, in fact, when I moved to Prague in 2016, I almost by chance fell into the world of film and TV, because there's quite a number of big productions that are filmed in Prague.
Really? Mm-hmm. But are you originally from the UK?
My mum is English and my father's Italian. So I
see. Okay. Yeah.
First 14 years of my life were in Italy. And then we moved to the UK, sort of Oxfordshire, that area. And age 19, I joined this theatre group in Italy.
Okay.
And then back to the UK for drama school, and then ended up living in London, and then travelled a great deal, and then eventually went to Prague.
And you say a lot of film work in Prague.
Yes, a lot of film work in Prague, and was lucky enough to get cast in a few nice things, a couple of good series. And I hadn't had any experience with film work before that. And it's wonderful. Yeah. Been a bit quiet lately over the past couple of years, to be honest. Been less active, been focusing on other sorts of projects, but I'd like to get back into it.
And what do you prefer, theater or film?
I think I have to say theatre, just because as a performer, I mean, I think you need to bring something to the set, of course, and whatever you bring will be captured by the camera. But you have repeated takes, and there's many factors that go into. Let's say it's an indirect experience because the editing happens and so on, and so what the viewer experiences is not in real time, you might say.
Yeah.
Whereas theatre, I think the immediacy of theatre and the unpredictability, the fact that you're in the moment, and also whatever whatever constellation of people is in the audience will affect the performance, and it's just all of that. I think it's just so exciting and so interesting and so needed in today's world, which is sort of, not to sound too what's the word? Well, I don't want to be too negative, but I do feel that we do lack a little bit of. It's a very screen-based world we live in, isn't it? It's very yeah.
I spoke to a South African actress recently, and we talked about this energy from the audience, and she was saying exactly that. There's almost like some nights you something happens in the audience and you feel it on stage, and other nights it's a totally different audience. So the whole thing is not one night the same.
No, that's right, and I think that's so close. I mean, it's such a great mirror for how life is and how reality really is. Moreover, it's very difficult to really know how a performance went, because we may think that we did a wonderful job one evening and the audience's response sort of conveys that. But that's not always the case, and it might sometimes happen that actually, you're made aware of the fact that actually, yesterday was actually a bit better, perhaps, or it's that in itself is interesting as well, how we perceive, how things went.
Mm-hmm. And I actually never thought of this, but it was only in lockdown when I spoke to a few opera singers who were in quarantine at the time, and we were talking about these live streamings, and because there were no audiences, so they had to film these performances, and they said that they missed that energy from the audience, and I never realized as an audience member how that affected them, and or you as actors or singers, or you always just thought of the energy coming from the stage.
That's absolutely essential. Without that, I don't think you can really have a performance. Actually, it's a relationship that you're establishing with another human being. It needn't be more than one person. It's just you, another person. That's really what a performance is, but you need that someone with whom to have an exchange of energy.
Yeah. But that's the magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But tell me about your Shakespeare in Song project.
So, basically, over the years, I've staged a number of Shakespeare plays as a director, both professional productions and professional student productions. I don't make a distinction, by the way, between student and sort of professional, because I think that's a bit of a fallacy. I think, you either sort of engage with something professionally or not. And I think, I've tried to always engage with that same mindset. But anyway, the point is, I've staged a number of Shakespeare plays, both with youngsters and adults. And Shakespeare's plays often have songs in them because he wrote a number of songs. And so over the years, I accumulated all these songs that I put to music. So the lyrics were there, but I put music to them. And moreover, over the past couple of years, I'd worked with an Italian theatre company called J Productions that stages English-speaking shows in Italy, inviting established artists from the UK. And with this company, I did a couple of shows where I was asked to put some Shakespeare songs to music. So, cut long story short, I had all of these songs. I wanted to write a few more. And so I thought, well, how could I sort of tie these in together to, as a single, concert recital kind of thing? And went about doing precisely that. It was produced by, again, J Productions, my good friend Julia Holden, who runs that, and it's her production company. And went to her with the first draft, performed it to her. She'd give me some feedback, and then eventually I had a show. And
wow,
so it's basically these songs, and in between them, I give context. I kind of explain to the audience, a little bit about the play that the songs are part of, and sort of give context in a way that's as interesting and engaging as possible.
When griping grieves the heartward wound, and doleful dumbs the mind oppress, then music with her silver sound is wont with speed to give redress of troubled mind for every soul. Sweet music hath a salve therefore.
And I think it's amazing because Shakespeare, for people who are really into Shakespeare, it all makes sense or they enjoy it. But for some people, it's such a distant thing, So it's, if you don't understand Shakespeare or you don't know about it, then, and I love the fact that you say you talk about this, bring it into context.
Yes, and actually, one of the main feedbacks that's been fairly consistent actually has been that, people come to me after the show or write to me and they say, I wasn't really into Shakespeare before, or in any case, hadn't sort of read any of it or seen any of his works or not much of his works. And this has made me really interested. It's made me want to go and see and read his works. And that's I'm really happy about that because, it's not that was the prime intent. I didn't go out there saying, all right, I want people to be interested in Shakespeare now. But that's been a byproduct. And I've been very, very pleased about that because I think Shakespeare's works need to be seen and read because they contain more or less everything about the human condition, and they just sort of precious pieces of work.
In joy it makes our mirth abound, in grief it cheers our heavy sprites. The careful head relief hath found by music's pleasant sweet delights. Our senses, what should I say more, are subject unto music's law.
So anyway, that's it's considered, and I've had some teachers as well come back to me and say, look, this is really good pedagogical material. This is the kind of thing which you could be taking around schools, high schools, and could really help students start to engage with Shakespeare's works.
I think that's amazing, and especially for children or for school, for students, because as you say, this makes the connection or this makes the interest then in Shakespeare. And I sometimes think also during the time that I've done these interviews, you know, talking to musicians when they talk about specific composers or specific works that they've been studying, and they start sort of talking about it, even for me, I then get so inquisitive, you know, then I suddenly, it suddenly make me listen to it in a different way. And I think it's so important that artists who have the knowledge talk about it, you know, for people who don't, because we don't all study the way you study. You know, I don't study music the way a pianist would study music, but the moment they start talking about it and sort of bringing it or bridging that gap, then as an audience member, you start enjoying it, or it start making you inquisitive to go and listen to more.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. You need to be sort of invited in a little bit. Yeah. I think Shakespeare comes with so much baggage. I mean, I think a lot of it, I mean, me included, I must admit, you know, and I say this with full respect and appreciation for the education I received. But frankly, the way Shakespeare was taught when I went to school was boring. It was boring. You know, we just read or studied texts, which, you know, come on, when you're a teenager, you know, firstly, you hardly understand a word. Secondly, it feels so archaic and sort of disconnected to our life, unless the teacher can really bring it to life and make it relevant. You know, and the way I was taught, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, you know, both from my generation and nowadays, but the way it's often been taught is just alienating for people. And then you develop a lifelong aversion to Shakespeare, unless you're fortunate enough, like I was, to actually be involved in acting and directing. So it was actually, for me, through acting and acting in and directing Shakespeare that I came to appreciate it. But beforehand, I was not interested at all because of, you know, the way I'd received it.
South Africa, and my first language is Afrikaans, but we did also in English in school, we did Shakespeare. But, you know, as an Afrikaans speaking child, it was so, the language was so foreign for me, you know, even English was, South Africa is a multi-lingual country, but even for me, it was, you know, we just couldn't enjoy reading it. But like you say, if somebody can just come in and make it more relatable almost, then I think you read it in a different way.
Yes, exactly. And I think, luckily, I mean, I can't say this for sure, but I do think in some countries, the education system has developed, and I think the more emphasis has been put on making sure that what's being learned is engaging, that is central to the learning experience. So thankfully, hopefully, there's a number of amazing teachers out there who are bringing Shakespeare to life. But I think, yeah.
I'm thinking you really have to you know, to visit schools and bring this project to schools.
You know what? It's something I really want to do. I really want to do that now. It's been, well, I first wrote it in, this show was 2 years ago, and I performed it in festivals and venues. But I think it has legs, as we say in theatre, in the sense that it's got, like, you know, I think it has great potential. And absolutely. I think, as you say, a tour of schools would be great. And I need to get my backside into gear and make that happen.
Well, we put it out in the universe and see how, what comes from it. But what I really love, I saw it on your Instagram page, is the Punchbag series.
Oh gosh, Petra, that's so touching that you've.
I love it.
I'm gonna have to give you a bit of context in a minute.
Yeah, but I just want to say the song about, is it Piccadilly? Something about
Piccadilly people, yeah.
yeah. I've been to Piccadilly in London quite a few times, so I love that song.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much. It's so nice when somebody takes the time to really listen to the songs and stuff.
Yeah.
And that song is 6.5 minutes long, so it's one of my longest songs. Yeah. So I mean, the Punchbag series. So what that is, so that takes place. So my father, who's Italian, he runs a cycling hotel in Italy near Imola, sort of Emilia-Romagna, and there's a gym in the hotel. So he has a cycling team and they train and so on. And anyway, so there's this gym, and so I started doing this summer. I thought, well, there's lovely acoustics in here. I've been a bit inactive online. I've got all these songs. Why don't I just play some of these? And so I thought, I sort of sat myself near the Punchbag and said, why do we call it the Punchbag series? And yeah, no, and Piccadilly People is one of the songs I'm most proud of, actually.
Really?
By proud, I mean, just in a very sort of wholesome sense. I know how much went into that song, both, let's say, what inspired it, the experiences that inspired it, and then the crafting that went into it. So there was quite a number of drafts of that. So a lot of work went into it. And it's the sort of song which is incredible. Like, I've played it everywhere from, like, sort of dive bars where nobody's there apparently to listen to music, to, the most respectful theatre-going audiences, all sorts of venues. But what that song does, for some reason, is it tends to people sort of go quiet and listen.
Piccadilly people with their iPhone earphones on, mobile conversations with Mr. Paris and Miss New York. Tanned family fathers and dyed blonde sexy mums, strolling with their cameras and their perfect blue-eyed sons. Nine, 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 nine. Na 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 na. See, I came to the city of London to sing the songs I write, but here I hand out leaflets in order to survive. Some of you might think that it's an easy job to do, but like anything, it's easy or as hard as you want it to.
And I don't know, I think it's maybe a combination of the fact that what it talks about is something fairly recognizable in all of us, the feeling of being forlorn, a sense of rejection, that one may experience at some point. And the way it's crafted, I think it's got some elements, both in the lyrics and the rhyming schemes of the music, that help the audience to in.
Nose, nose, nose again. These people are like transparent doors. I knock into indifference, and inside of me it hurts. It hurts to be rejected, 'cause I didn't ask for much. It hurts 'cause I've been rejected by the one I love. And the Piccadilly people.
But what inspired it?
So I moved to London straight after drama school in late 2009. And of course, did the complete opposite to what you're supposed to do, which has been kind of the story of my life, actually. So what you're supposed to do after drama school, especially as a good drama school, is you go to London, you get an agent, try and get an agent, get out there, try and do as many auditions as you can. And at the time, I wouldn't do things the same way now, but at the time, my thought process was, you know what, I don't want to go through the process of essentially being rejected left, right, and centre. And the way I interpreted that, I think it was in part a fear of failure, to be honest, for sure. In fact, it was definitely a fear of failure combined with a sense of, you know what, I am a performer and I'm not going to be told when or when not to perform. I have these songs, I have a guitar. Excuse the French, can I use a bad word? Or
Yeah.
like, fuck it. I'm gonna get out there and I'm gonna do my thing, whether it's acting or singing makes no difference to me. And so I just had these songs, had a handful of songs, and I contacted venues and did that, focused on that, had a MySpace page at the time. You had a MySpace page. And so to come back to what inspired the story, so I was in London doing that. Of course, you can't live off music at the beginning, sometimes for a very long time, sometimes never. But in that case, I was, just starting out. So I had a job, I was given a job as a leaflet boy. So I was handing out leaflets in Piccadilly Circus. Mm. And all this was happening with the backdrop of having been in a fairly meaningful, very meaningful relationship with somebody, and things didn't work out, and I was utterly heartbroken. So you're in London, you're heartbroken, you are, trying to sort of, get your songs out there, and you're doing leafleting. So I think the contrast of these very strong feelings, this great vulnerability, and potentially the feeling of being very alone and alienated in this massive city full of people all in their own worlds, doing a job where you are effectively being rejected all the time because nobody takes leaflets. I mean, I don't take leaflets. I'm a bit more mindful about it now, having been there. So the combination of all those elements led to the song, and that's what the song's about. It's the experience of, it's written in the first person, but it could be, it's a leaflet boy who's heartbroken, and he's experiencing this massive sense of rejection from his lover, but also from the world around him. But in the end, he finds hope in that one thing, which is basically that all this has meaning because this is your journey, and in this case, expressed through song. He says, "Goodbye to you, my love. Goodbye. I've made another song." So all of this has become a song. So it's been transformed. And I think that's also what tends to be quite touching for audiences and resonates with audiences.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's maybe why it spoke to me as well.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Yeah.
But then after your journey, so after London, you went to Prague.
After London, I didn't go to Prague immediately. I started working with young people. So basically what happened is I was in London and doing a lot of gigs and developing a great deal. It was a wonderful school for me in terms of songwriting. I developed my songwriting style also to make sure that, there was good engagement with audiences and so on. So a very good school. But I was admittedly struggling with the fact that I had to work as a waiter. Really, that's how I earned my living. And I wrote another song about that called actually "Does the Fish Have Bones," which is an anecdotal song.
That I heard as well. Yeah.
So anyway, that was my day job, which it's fine. It's fine. And I did that job for many years. I actually started working in restaurants at age 16.
Restaurant, busy, busy restaurant, customers eating their way to dessert. Families, tourists, young couples and old, and the businessman eating alone. Waiters with smiles held in place by $5.80 an hour, and the thought of some tips with yeses and a no says and a pleases and a thank yous and a Sullivan's nod. Does the fish have bones? Restaurant, busy, busy restaurant. Where are the restrooms to the toilets, you mean? Americans, Indians, Italians, Australians, and the people from Paris. Suddenly, half of the restaurant's silent. A woman has made a complaint. She's extremely upset and annoyed by the terrible fact that the fish on her plate, the fish has bones.
But anyway, I got to the point where I think a combination of factors, an opportunity came through, which was to work with a language school in Southampton who did theatre projects with schools abroad, staging plays with schools abroad. Very simple sort of plays, nothing too elaborate. But anyway, that was an opportunity I just couldn't miss. And I started doing that and developed that sort of project and saw that as an opportunity to write material for these students and adapt plays and write songs with musicals and stuff. And eventually set up my own company, which was called Oxford World Theatre. And at first it was just myself traveling around Europe a lot. We traveled to Russia as well, quite a lot in those days.
Oh, really?
And and would stage plays, with non-native English-speaking students. They would be the actors. And the project grew nicely, and then eventually I had a team of people actually working as part of the company. And so I spent probably, good 3 or 4 years really being based in the UK, but traveling a lot. I was always mostly Italy, various parts of Italy, Russia, a great deal, Central Europe, Eastern Europe. Yeah. So, and then eventually moved to Prague, I've been based there on and off since 2016.
Oh, okay. And you're still continuing with your theatre project then?
Well, not really. I mean, yes and no. I've been working more stably with an international school in Prague. And what I've done is sometimes I've got some holiday periods in which I've done this sort of project in Italy, say, for example.
Okay.
But the company in itself doesn't exist anymore. Unfortunately, I kind of wish I'd kept it going, actually, but it would have been quite difficult to do everything, to be, a performing arts teacher at this international school whilst also keeping a company alive. It's not easy. So.
Yeah, but I think sometimes something has a place and a time, and it takes you to somewhere else, but its purpose was just in a specific time.
I think you're right. And also, I think what might have happened if I'd kept going is I might have been doing, I probably would have done different things, but I think there's the risk of kind of doing the same thing over and over again. Whereas, the way my educational career developed with this international school was, I got to work with some amazing students, B, lots of resources, and that the school, a lot of investment in theatre and getting to stage plays in wonderful, professional theatres in Prague. I've staged plays in some of the best theatres in Prague, thanks to working at this school, So, and I've had a lot of creative freedom. So I've both staged things I've written, or Shakespeare plays. I did Our Town by Thornton Wilder one year, all sorts of things, and it's been very, very, very rewarding. And I think I've developed my craft accordingly, that way. So you're right. Yeah.
But amazing that you have these opportunities now, and sort of you can do the things that you love to do now.
Yeah, I think I'm in quite an enviable position, actually, because, I guess both my artistic life, by that I mean like my own personal projects, Shakespeare In Song, but there's other projects that I'm currently preparing and, that are not connected to any educational contexts. That side of things and let's say my educational work, they're all, they all move in the same direction. I've been lucky in that. I think what happened after after the London period, I think things began to align for me, because as much as working as a waiter and doing the music, in a way, I think that friction probably did create some of my best work. And I think, to be honest, some of the songs I wrote in that period, I don't know if I'll ever be able to replicate some of the quality there. And I think that was partly due to the difficulty of that life, of those two worlds, such stark contrast. But I don't know how sustainable that would have been in the long term. And I didn't want to get stuck, working in restaurants for the rest of my life, or too long anyway. Yeah.
But I hear this from many singer-songwriters, actually, that the best songs came out of hard times or sad times, or even composers talk about that, that it's something that comes out, from these periods.
True. So true. For me, like writing, whether it be songwriting or writing plays or directing production, like when my mother sadly passed away in 2020.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I remember that whole period towards the end. I was in the middle of directing a student production, actually, and writing an online show. Thank God for that. Thank God for that, because it was, for two reasons. One, I think it's not, no matter how difficult the situation is and how much grief there is, I don't think it's healthy to always. I think you need release and relief through meaningful, practices. So in this case, those were things and are things that I enjoy. So there's that, but also, the channeling of it all. I remember this. I remember at one point she was in hospital, and this was about a year before she passed, and she'd had an emergency situation, and she was in intensive care, and so I had to fly over to the UK, and I was on quite a deadline. I needed to write the songs for a show, an adaptation of Pinocchio, which is an incredible story. And I remember I didn't have a guitar, but I recorded just on my phone, and I'd be like in the kitchen area of the hospital. And I'd be recording, I basically recorded most of the drafts of the songs while I was there. Just, don't know why I've gone down so much detail with this. I guess we're having a very open chat, but it was, you just, as you say, some of the best work you do is in the midst of great challenges, personal challenges, and I think I don't know why it's so, but I think there's something about there's no other way. There's no way. That's your only way to cope, perhaps, and it is also it's a lifeline. It's like if you can see it, and sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes things are so dark that you just can't see it, and fair enough. But sometimes if you can see it and seize it, then it can pull you out. And it's God, we're so lucky, we're so lucky to have that. And it doesn't have to be art; it can be anything really that's meaningful. But in this case, I guess you're also creating something new, which can then go on to, influence other people. So, yeah.
But
Sorry, I talk a lot, Petra. I'm sorry.
I love it.
I
love it. No, I love what you're saying, because I'm just thinking now, if you listen to what you've created there in the hospital now, does it take you also emotionally back to the time when your mum was in hospital, or is it you made a distance?
I'll be honest, not that batch of songs. But there's another song I wrote for an online show.
Mm.
It's the final song of this online show, and it's that one does every time I listen back to it, because I remember sending it to her as well, and she loved that song actually. It's called, oh gosh, what's it called? Oh, him. It's called "Hymn to Belonging." And I think what happened, and one has to be mindful of doing this, by the way, one has to be careful of letting too much of one's personal experience enter the narrative of a story, because then, that gets confusing for an audience. But in this case, the whole story was about a sort of cataclysmic global event meant to mirror fictionally the whole situation with COVID, because all this was happening, whilst COVID was going on as well. And it's the sort of final song, and it's all about, because the people in this show are having to live separately and communicate only online, just like we did in COVID. So this whole song is a celebration, really, of how we're all connected, and for some reason, my whole sort of the way I was feeling about, my mother's imminent passing and everything filtered into it. And so when I listen to that, to cut a long story short, Petra, sorry, that really it moves me, because I know, the backdrop of it.
But I do believe that type of honesty and that almost that feeling that you had, that emotion that you had, that when you wrote it, and the connection with what was happening, I think that also connects with somebody else, because it's something from a real place. And I've spoken to a few singer-songwriters in the past few months where they talk about really coming from an authentic place, or from a real place, where they talk about their emotions, or they express what they are feeling, and hoping that the audience can relate to that, and I think it is. I think we're moving to a time where that's so important, that it's not just about selling the record or, making the song popular, but really that it's real, that it's about a real feeling and a real place, and somewhere where you felt this emotion, and somebody else will connect with it as well.
No, I completely agree with you.
Mm.
I think what we have the opportunity to do, and it's a responsibility as well, is that we can help each other to feel. And the life of our feelings, I mean, can't speak for everyone, but I think even if we may have quite an active emotional life, it's difficult to really know what's going on there. It feels like a somehow hidden part of ourselves, and also depending on the culture we grow up in or live in, it's not always possible to express how we feel.
Yeah.
And I think what songs can do, whether they be, steeped in fiction or, autobiographical, if, as you say, they're coming from an authentic place, then that will resonate with other people, and I think we just need to be given permission to feel. We just need to. It's funny because I say this. Recently, I've been feeling very vulnerable myself, actually, last week, for whatever reason. Well, I think I know the reason. But anyway, I found myself feeling very vulnerable and kind of feeling like anything could make me well up. And on the one hand, it's very uncomfortable to go around feeling that way, But on the other hand, I found myself just feeling that when I'd be speaking to someone, I could see the person in front of me. And, even like, how usually I do anyway, mostly I not necessarily ignore, but I dismiss or don't pay any attention to, say, a homeless person on the streets. I found myself just being more receptive to even strangers, or a stranger in this case, and going through their own plight. All I'm trying to say is I think to be vulnerable, to be allowed to feel, is something which we don't really pay much attention to in the world, and I think for good reasons, because it's difficult to function and have a productive society. But I think it's the gateway to our humanity. We all have these feelings, and so anyway, I think songs.
You made me think now. Just yesterday, I spoke to a friend of mine, and she told me that this is now the story. She told me her son and his wife, they were having they were just having a walk, and they sat in a park on a bench and just sat there chatting. But they had a rose. He gave her a rose, and before they went for the walk. And then they were planning to go to a restaurant, and she had the rose in her hand. And as they walked past a few benches, and on one of the benches sat a girl, a young girl, and her daughter-in-law just had the urge to give this rose to this girl, and she gave it to her and started talking, and this girl said to her, "You know what, I was just watching you and your husband there on the bench, and I didn't have any hope for myself anymore, and I was contemplating to take my life, but this rose that you've given me now has just changed my mind. There's something to live for." And you think, such a simple thing, and they didn't know. They didn't know this girl from anywhere. She was just sitting there, and what was this urge that this woman had to give her the rose? It was just passing by, and just thought, oh, I'll give her the rose, because they were heading to a restaurant. Things like that. I just think, this.
Yeah.
If we, I'm not saying we should be more aware, but we should be more aware of our instinct to react to something, because it was her instinct to give the rose. So
that's very moving, that is. And it almost feels to me, that's another great example of this. It's like there's a whole parallel river to life, which operates on a different level, and it seems like feelings and being in touch with our feelings is the way into that. And on that level, I think things happen that may feel almost miraculous, like what you just described. I mean, I've had conversations in my most vulnerable moments, and I'm sure you'll know what I mean by this, and many people will know exactly what I mean by this. You feel like you encounter some angels almost, people who, complete strangers, who you may be hiding it very well, but for whatever reason, they'll engage with you in something they say or do. It's just,
I've spoken to amazing people, and I just believe that people come on my newsfeed for a reason. So, but it's like you're saying, we have just to allow to be touched by people.
yes.
And
yeah. And that seems to come about through a process. I think the whole question of suffering is really interesting, isn't it? Because we sort of understandably, we shy away and we reject the experience of suffering. But actually, it's the very thing that can. Who was it? I can't remember. I think I've come across some quotes where something along the lines of the heart needs to break in order for some. I can't remember. Anyway, the point is, I guess, if we're able to somehow not welcome necessarily suffering, but just be there with it, gosh, the riches that we can, the wealth of I don't even know how to word it better, but you know what I mean. It's just,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
that vulnerability comes about mostly through suffering in its many forms, and that opens us up to other people's vulnerability, and that's where what we all have in common resides, that human core, which is difficult to describe, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's where you start to feel love for one another. Yeah.
And this is also why I think, and this is part of why I do this project, is the importance of art in education, because I think this is such an important part of life, and also giving children the opportunity to express themselves, and that they, in all forms of art, I think is as important as the sciences and maths, and should be really in schools on the same level as those subjects.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally, and I've been fortunate enough to work in institutes where a lot of belief is placed on precisely that.
Really?
And no, you're right, because it's an emotional education. It's really important. And I don't think, for example, the performing arts, it's not all about, sometimes a great deal of emphasis is put on, confidence building and so on and so forth. But that's something that comes about, if it's meant to, through a sort of something deeper, which is becoming more familiar with the world and expressing your emotions. Engaging with others, that's the other thing, isn't it? I mean, in the theatre, you're playing with others, so we're keeping that childlike quality, which mostly we lose, don't we, as we grow older. So I agree. I think it's as important.
But Daniel, what are your wishes for the future? What is your dream?
Well, there's various dreams. I think in my work, honestly, what I would want to do is I would like to. Well, some of these things are in the process of happening, actually, but I'd like to perform more, get out there more. Shakespeare in Song, I'd like to bring out and about. I'd like to direct plays, some professional productions. For that, I mean, with adult cast, yeah. And it's difficult. Dreams that I'm making at the moment, which will be concrete. They will exist. So they're sort of, I guess, in the process of being realized. But more long term, well, I would like to allow a bit more space, to be honest with you, Petra, to my, let's say, artistic strand. A bit more space, because I've had to sort of dedicate a lot of time to sort of working as an educator, and I love that, but I do really miss this other strand. I want that. I need that to be more active. So I'm working on sort of making that possible. And that includes, as I said, Shakespeare In Song. There's another piece I'm writing at the moment, which is going to be premiered in June, which is around the life of Saint Francis.
Oh, okay.
There'll be a series of songs, much in the Shakespeare In Song format. There's a play I wrote, which is going to be produced again by J Productions. It'll be a longer process. It's going to take 2 years to stage it properly, but that's going to happen. There's another play I'm writing now about life in a sectarian context, because I experienced life for a period in a very sort of claustrophobic context, and I'm writing a one-man show on that. So those, and I need those, and I want those to be. I want to get out there with these. I really want that, and so that's professionally, let's say. And on a personal level, there's a number of. I've been through a big change in my life recently, and I really my dream and hope is that things can settle well in that sense, and there can be a balance established there, and a sort of sense of peace in that.
Wonderful. I so wish that for you, and hope that for you, that because that's also important, that personal side of things.
Oh gosh, it really is. It really is, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you, Petra. I appreciate that. And
qui dove il mare luccica e tira forte il vento, su una vecchia terrazza davanti al golfo di Sorrento. Un uomo abbraccia una ragazza dopo che aveva pianto. Poi si schiarisce la voce e ricomincia il canto. Te voglio bene, sai, ma tanto, tanto bene, sai, è una catena ormai, mi scioglie il sangue d'inte vene, sai, potenza della lirica, dove ogni dramma è un falso, che con un po' di trucco e con la mimica puoi diventare un altro, ma due occhi che ti guardano così vicini e veri, ti fanno scordare le parole, confondono i pensieri. Ti voglio bene, sai, ma tanto, tanto bene, sai, è una catena ormai che scioglie il sangue e tinte vene.